All right, welcome back in, everyone. We're chatting all things United States women's national team friendlies versus Ireland during this April international window. In the build up to the matches that will take place on April 8th and April 11th, there has been some various media availability. We wanted to chat a little bit about that as well. Just reactions to things like that. I was able to sit in on the media call, which featured both Julie
Mhm.
Ertz and Sophia Smith. I think a lot of great stuff coming out of those two things. And those two players talking about kind of where they are in different phases right now, because we've got Sophia Smith, who's still scoring goals nonstop, and we've got Julie Ertz, making her return after an extended absence from the pitch. But I think the common thread for me, kind of listening to those two in separate calls, that these players, as the weeks go by and the days go by and gets closer and closer to our club, they're just ready to just get in there and compete. Even if
Yeah,
even if this
they just wanna
even
play.
even if
Just
the early even if it's like the trainings where they're
yeah.
just like going at each other, they're just like, we hear about it all the time, how these bubbles, right? These training
Mhm.
camp bubbles are just like some of the most intense experiences that some of these players have, because they are both competing against each other essentially for World Cup spots, but also teammates,
Yeah.
right?
It's
Um,
almost like this double-edged sword that they have because you also want your teammates to do well. Like, it's awesome. You want Mallory Swanson and Sophia Smith and Alex Morgan to score a bunch of bangers during practice. That gets their confidence up. That does great. But as a defender, as a goalkeeper, no, you wanna make sure you stop them. The competition is incredible, and the fact that Smith and Ertz haven't been in camp, I mean, Ertz much longer than Smith, they're just itching to get back out there. They're like twitching with like withdrawal from not playing with this team. And that's basically what we saw in these media availabilities from both of them.
Obviously some different, line of questioning for both players. I think for Ertz, a lot was focused on her, return back, her path back, her decision making, and in her return, and what that's like, sort of getting back in the mix, but this time as a mom. And really appreciated what she said um, in these media calls, about kind of how she's looked to other players
Mhm.
as well for support. I think Julie Ertz, she's a player who played with the Red Stars for a really long time, and that's a local team that I've been able to cover. And I can tell you, and during her time with Chicago, constantly hearing from teammates that Julie Ertz is a player that demands a lot of excellence on the pitch.
Yeah.
So in terms of the leadership that she provides, there are teammates and players who want to do well because they know that their captain essentially, expects that and wants that from them. So I think to sort of knowing that and having that in the back of my mind, and then getting into a media call with this player, and getting to hear how things have changed for her since,
Mhm.
post injury, and obviously since having a son, and how she's actually someone who's been looking at other players and relying on and leaning on other friends and teammates. She shouted out Shayna Williams, who's with the Red Stars now, as someone, navigating a pro career with three sons. She mentioned Kalia Watt specifically, that they had actually spent some time together, training and trying to get back into form. And we had heard so much, I think, up until this point, with Andonovsky's preliminary roster announcement press conference, that the conversations that they had did revolve around what she was doing to try to retain fitness and remain in form, and the
Mhm.
training that she has done with various MLS academies, versus maybe some of the line of question that we saw from Sophia Smith, because she, again, this is the player who's like incredibly in form. Shout out to Tamara for asking Sophia Smith a question about her current era, and I loved the response from Sophia Smith, how she was like, I'm not going to refer to it as my villain era because I'm a very sweet and happy person on the pitch. But she just referred to this moment as her winning era. And I love that. That's the kind of energy you want from your goal scorer. I
Oh,
think in
completely.
front of you of a World Cup.
Yeah, completely. I mean, that's exactly what you want a player to say, right? There comes an element that we see a lot of these players that are so humble, right? And they are just so grateful to be where they are. And it is nice to hear that and nice to see that in a sense, but it's almost better in this sense when Sophia Smith is like, no, like I'm here to win. I'm here to go out and score goals. Like she basically was like, that's what I wake up and want to do every day. And I'm going to do that. And to hear that as a fan, as someone covering her and this team in the space, it is very, very inspiring to hear that confidence coming from a young player that not only does she believe in herself that she can do it, but she's obviously feeling the confidence of her teammates and coaches and support around her that is saying, yeah, you can just go out and do this if you continue to work hard. And then the fact that she's executing it and able to do that. I mean, it's truly incredible and so impressive to see from such a young player. It's Vlatko also saying that it doesn't look like Sophia Smith has technically missed a beat at all either. Like because she hasn't in what she's been able to do at the club level with Portland Thorns, but welcoming the team back in. Sophia Smith saying that like, hey, it's nice that like I was welcomed back into this group and the competition is still there. I mean, it's really exciting. It is a really exciting time, but definitely different vibes with Earth's coming back and Smith coming back.
So I think it's important to note that when we were on this call, it's Julie Ertz and it's Sophia Smith, right? Two players who are maybe in different phases of their build up to the World Cup, right? And I think that sort of leans into maybe the next part of this segment, which we're talking about these games and the players who may or may not participate in this. Who are the players who need minutes versus who are the players who's going to get them? Because that was one of the little bullet points that was on this roster announcement when it dropped. These are the last international
Mhm,
friendlies before Andonovsky and the staff
mhm.
finalize a World Cup roster. So yes, there is going to be an emphasis on club play for the remaining couple of months in the buildup to the World Cup and when that roster is announced. But this camp and these players, this is the last shot that they get in
Yeah.
this type of stage. So let's maybe start with the who needs minutes. When we're looking at this roster, Lisa, who's available? Obviously, we only very minimally touched on maybe who's not available, but the 26 that are here, who are a couple players or a bunch of players that you think need some minutes in these upcoming two friendlies?
I want to preface by saying I wish that there was like 4 games or rather like 3 games with like 3 25-minute like periods throughout each of them, like get a lot of rotation in there. But that's not how that works. That's not how the sport works. When I look at who needs minutes on this roster, Tierna Davidson. I want to see her get consistent minutes in that back line. There's been a lot of different rotation between Cook, Germa, Sauerbrunn. I want Davidson in that mix. I want to see Tierna Davidson and Naomi Germa in that center back because that's a pairing that I really think is going to be crucial moving forward, and kind of see how that kind of fizzles out. I mean, there's plenty of players in this defender group that need minutes, right? I'm looking at Kelly O'Hara, who hasn't been back in, Emily Sonnet, Casey Kruger, who is back newly into this roster. But I think among those 10 defenders, Davidson is the one that needs the most minutes in that group, or really, maybe not the most minutes, but the most amount of evaluation from Black Wananowski to see not only is she fit? Is she ready to play? Is she not missing a beat? Which I think she's pretty fit and I think she's ready to play, but how she works alongside the players on either side of her and that center back pairing. That's one that I'm like very keyed in on. Defenders for you, anyone else in particular stand out?
Well, I know you see me over here nodding in agreement with
Yeah.
everything that you're saying about Davidson. I'm with you 100%. I think the only extra tidbit I would add on that is we got to see Davison with Girma. Prior to
Yeah.
her injury,
Yeah.
we like you said, we saw her run in that rotation. We've seen Alana Cook endlessly because for a very long time, really over these last 2 years to 18 months, she was the healthiest center back option for this team and there's film there's a ton of games that they could look back on and see minutes between Davidson and Cook sharing that partnership.
Yeah.
But in the absence of Davidson and her return from an ACL, Girma has risen up within this center back core. And that's something that we didn't get to see because Davidson was injured. So,
Yeah.
will one of these games feature those two
That's
together and
yeah.
how that partnership might work? So, I'm with you 100%. But I think we also need to see Kelly O'Hara in the mix and
Mhm.
how she is looking, with this back line. And I think if you're calling this player in, you have to throw some kind of minutes to Casey Kruger. I'm a little curious about this because
Yeah.
it's evident that this is a player that Andonovski rates as a defender. He's a coach with an extensive NWSL background, and he has rated her for quite some time. She went to the Olympics under his roster as one of those four extra players that they were able to take in the extended pandemic rosters. And now she is returned back into the mix after maternity leave.
Mhm.
So while he rates her, that's great. Is he going to throw her some minutes? I don't know. Would I like
Put
to
your
see
money
it?
where your
Yes.
mouth is.
Yeah. Would I like to see it? Yes, 100%. So I think there's a number of areas in this defensive back line where we can see. But since we're talking about defenders, let's stay there. Let's stay there. So we're talking about who needs minutes versus who we think is actually going to get them.
Yeah.
And I think a couple of those players as well that we could take a look at in the defenders is Emily Fox and Sofia Huerta. Which of these two players are going to get extended minutes? Because I think with the return of Crystal Dunn, as she continues to get more playing time at the outside back position for this team, and now you've got Casey Kruger making a return, who is a little bit more versatile, who has played along the line at outside back and at center back if needed in an emergency. And now Turner Davidson and Kelly O'Hara, who has traditionally been the right back for this team. So, what is that going to mean for players like Emily Fox and Sophia Huerta? We've been talking about that all along, that as players, veteran players, experienced players begin to make their return and get reintegrated back to this team, eventually we'll see players rotated out. Which of these two are either of those players going to get those minutes? Do they need them? Who do you think might get them?
Yeah, that's such a good question between Emily Fox, Sophia Huerta, kind of the balance, specifically looking at just those two. And it's incredibly difficult. And I don't think it's fair to kind of remove other factors. And those other factors being Crystal Dunn, Kelly O'Hara, even Casey Kruger. I think that she will get a little bit more minutes than both of these players because she is newly brought into this roster. But when I look at the versatility between Huerta and Fox, they bring very different things to the table. For me when watching them play and Fox we've seen play on both sides of the field pretty comfortably. With Racing Louisville, she's switched between right back and left back, playing right back this past weekend and the opening 2 weeks of the NWSL. But with Vlad Kwiatkowski, she played the left back side entirely. So I think that versatility is something that Fox might have over Huerta. And I think Huerta could play both sides, but we just haven't seen it. She's traditionally been on the right with like sporadic minutes on the left back side. And because of that and kind of what Fox has given, Fox really came in and it was like baptism by fire and then gave a lot of minutes. Fox can get forward, she can get into the mix, she can run a little bit rogue, but I think that almost works with this team and with this roster. I think that if it's between those two, he's probably going to lean a little bit more in favor of Emily Fox.
All right, I like it. Interesting rationale. Let's maybe move to the midfielders because I
Yeah.
know everybody wants to keep talking about the Ertz, I guess, the elephant-sized Ertz thing in the room, right? Let's talk a little bit about who we think needs minutes versus who will get them. I guess we start with Ertz. I mean, I think she fits in both of those categories, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who needs him? Ertz at this point. Who will get them? Probably Ertz at this point. I don't know if it's going to be like a start and over the course of
Yeah.
a full 90 minutes. I don't think you do that to
I
a
don't think
player
so.
making their return from an injury and maternity leave after nearly a 2-year absence. And you're just not going to say, here you go run around for 90 minutes and let's see what happens. Um, but I would anticipate that we are going to see Julie Ertz in some capacity over these two friendlies. Do you
Yes.
agree, disagree?
So Ertz needs minutes,
Yeah.
right? I think that the evaluation in training is super helpful, right? You're going up against some of the best competition in your own teammates. However, you want to see what she can do in game minutes. Game fit is very different than running the beep test in training and doing drills. I don't think we'll see 90 from Ertz. I don't think we'll see her get a start in this first match at all. I think we'll see her maybe come in 60th minute. How can she close out the game? How can she change things? I think, honestly, we'll see a little bit of consistency from Black Laninowski in the midfield to start the first friendly against Ireland. But yes, we're going to see Ertz. Unless like something has happened in training that of course the public doesn't know about, but I don't think she would be called into media availability if we weren't going to see her get time. I don't think that they would be continuously publicizing everything that's happening if she wasn't up to form. Clearly she is, otherwise she wouldn't even be called into this camp. You don't get to that point. So Ertz is up to form. She's ready to play. She's fit. She'll get minutes. And Black Laninowski needs to see her get minutes. Now he's seen her play alongside Rose Lavelle and Lindsay Horan before.
Yeah.
That's what we saw throughout the World Cup. So that trio necessarily isn't new. Of course, there's been some absences, some evolution in the game for for Horan, for Lavelle, and then Ertz missing such a long lapse of time. But it's like riding a bike when you get back in there with the same personnel around you. So I'm not so sure we'll see that for an extended amount of time. The middle of Haran, Lavelle, Ertz. We might see it, but not for a long time. I think he'll want to see how Ertz works with a Christy Mewis or a Korniak or an Ashley Sanchez. I mean, I would like to see Sanchez, Lavelle, Ertz in that midfield. I love.
Lisa.
I know.
Lisa living
I
dangerously. So
know.
you're like, here are my bubble midfielders, and I want to see them all at the same time
All at the
playing
same
together.
time. Well, I don't think. I mean, Rose Lavelle is not a bubble midfielder. I think
Maybe more Sanchez and other.
I also don't think Sanchez is a bubble midfielder. I think she's
Oh no, me
in
neither.
this roster. It's Ertz more so
Yeah,
that is on the biggest bubble of them all. And if she's going to get minutes, I mean, who do you want to see her play with in the midfield?
Lavelle or Ertz?
Ertz.
Oh, I want to throw it back to 2019 just because it's evident that that's what this coaching staff
I know.
is doing. When we got to see it, we got to see if it works because during that 2019 World Cup there was an adjustment that
Yeah.
was made. We saw this combination of Ertz and Haran and Lavelle in an early group or stage match or two,
Yeah.
and then that switched. Sam Mewis got involved, and that midfield trio of Mewis, Ertz, and Lavelle, they rode that all the way to
Yep.
a World Cup championship when it came down to the
As the
knockout
wheels
round.
were falling off, they were still riding it. Injuries from
So,
Sam, injuries to Julie, and they were still the strongest trio that we could put together.
we're looking at. I'm thinking of that back in my head. So
Okay.
things have changed, though. I think for all three of those players, really. Ertz is making a return from an absence, and you've got a Lindsay Horan who's playing in Europe, back in Europe, and her game has evolved in different ways,
Yeah.
and as has Rose Lavelle. These are two players who've gotten better since
So much better.
2019,
So
actually.
much
So,
better.
I would like to see some like minutes between those three, but I don't know
I don't think we'll
if
see
that's the trio.
extended minutes there. I don't.
Yeah. I really don't. I don't know how, with these being the last 2 friendlies if you're gonna see extended minutes there. Maybe we might see like a slither of minutes, but maybe not extensive. But I think if these are the last 2, I still do want to see Ashley Sanchez in the mix. I don't forget about Andy Sullivan. Andy Sullivan has been the 6 for this
I
team
know.
for quite some time.
I don't think
I
she'll
still
take a
wanna
back
see that.
seat. I don't think she'll
No.
take a back seat in these friendlies by any means. I think she'll get the start in the first friendly 100%. I think Sullivan will get
Yeah.
the start. She deserves
I'm
it.
with you. I think in terms of forwards, though, maybe let's chat a little bit about that before we pivot out of this segment. When we're looking at forwards, who needs the minutes versus who's gonna get them? I think Ashley Hatch is someone who kind of fits the who needs minutes versus who's going to get them. I think if you're looking,
Williams.
yeah, I think Williams will get them. I think she's had a really good first couple of camps with this national team.
Mhm.
I think she's got a strong week 1 and week 2 performances out of the league going into this April window, and I wanna see Lynn Williams, continue to get minutes in that top line. And it's getting crowded because I think a
Getting
lot of these players are pretty much starting caliber type of players. Now,
yeah.
who is the ideal
They are
3?
they are all starting caliber
Yeah.
players. I mean, they
Well,
are.
I'm talking about just for Andonovski.
Yeah.
As far as who is Andonovski's ideal 3, I mean, it's been a combination of Swanson, Morgan, and Smith.
Mhm.
But Lynn Williams is back and mostly healthy. We TBD on the elbow, right? We
Yeah.
gotta we got to hear about that. But I think with these more recent camps, you're also looking at a Trinity Rodman who has really
Right.
kind of, I think, propelled herself up as this sort of you need to take me to the World Cup type of player, even if this is just like your one of your game changers, right?
Yeah.
So I think maybe Hatch for me kind of fits more of that mold of who needs minutes versus who's going to get them. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, when you look at this group of 6 in the forward group, Ashley Hatch, Alex Morgan, Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith, Mallory Swanson, and then Lynn Williams, locks are Alex Morgan, Sophia Smith, Mallory Swanson. Like locking throw away the
Yeah.
key essentially for this World Cup roster. So then it comes down to, yeah, I think Ashley Hatch maybe needs the most. I don't even want to say minutes, but like she's got the most to prove almost
Yeah.
to force her way onto this roster. Now, I don't think that means she's going to get significant minutes necessarily. I think she'll get minutes, but she's not going to be a starter for this team. She's not. So why put her in that position? You don't. That's not where you're going to see her, right? Throughout if she makes this roster moving forward. So I think Ashley Hatch, we're going to see her get minutes, but probably more minutes that are more likely to be when we'll see her moving forward. So 45 minutes maybe we'll see her get in, 60 minutes we'll see her get in. And those are going to be more important minutes for Hatch than if she were to start the game. How can she enter the pitch, be a super sub, be a game changer, add a spark, add something different to what
Yeah.
the US has already done in the attacking end. So that's where Ashley Hatch needs to kind of fit the bill and say, this is where I'm going to shake things up. Now, Trinity Rodman, I want to see her get minutes and all over the place and provide different things, maybe get a start, maybe because she's one of those players that is, as you just said, forcing her way onto this roster and forcing Vlatko Andonovski to say, I can't not take Trinity Rodman to the World Cup. I need her there. So to me, Rodman needs minutes over a Hatch a little bit more and a Lynn Williams to kind of get back into the groove of things, see how they play alongside each other. And then it comes down to player combinations because the combination that is most likely going to be the starting one going forward is the Morgan Swanson Smith. That's where they found a lot of success. That's what he likes the most. So then how do you fit around that? So who comes into that? Who comes out of that? Where does that kind of shake out? What's like your second best rotation almost?
Yeah, I think maybe that's something where we got to keep an eye on who's going to be that like that off the bench impact type of trio that maybe the coaching staff might need to call
Mhm.
on in a late game scenario or something like that. This is it. This is the window of time that everyone has to utilize, the coaches included. So I don't know. We'll see.
Pressure,
We'll have.
pressure.
I'm sure we're gonna have plenty to talk about once we see that first starting 11 drop for the teams on Saturday, April 8th.